Hello and welcome, strategy game fans. I am Rob from Explominate, and again, I'm joined by a special guest, Jan Wagner from Owned by Gravity. Welcome to the show.
Hey there.
Hey, so today we're going to be, I'm so excited about this because we're going to be showcasing SpellForce Conquest of EO, and it's such an amazing game already. I'm just like, I want to just talk about it so much, but instead of me talking about it, how about, would you mind telling me a little bit about the SpellForce universe and maybe even kind of tell me about why Owned by Gravity decided to make this game?
Yeah, so SpellForce has been around for over 20 years by now. It's originally been developed by Finite in Germany, and it was one of the first of its kind of real-time strategy role-playing game crossover. So where really you have like parts where you played characters and heroes. And the world was over, I think, 2 games and 3 expansions each, was really like developed in depth. And I was actually a producer back at the time on that project.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I kind of have a personal relationship with SpellForce. And when we now talk to THQ, the guys who now own the SpellForce license, we were like, hey, is there a possibility to do something? We've got this other title here that we did before, Fantasy General 2, which kind of went over well. So people liked it, and we was like, yeah, we can do something similar, but we'd like to do, take it up a notch. And they were open to the idea. And then we kind of did a deep dive into the world, and because we're doing something different with it, so it's a turn-based game. It's not a real-time strategy game. You're not playing heroes, but you're playing a mage that controls heroes. So there's a lot of like aspects of the world that we take in, and a lot of the history we take on. A lot of the kind of main characters, or well, not main characters, but the kind of the main antagonists in our game are like the movers and shakers of the world. And so SpellForce for us was an ideal situation because there is like a good gap in the history of SpellForce where you're not exactly sure what happened, which we went right in and try to tell your story as a player. But there's enough world and enough history around it to actually help us, to inform us about, what is there, what kind of world are we looking at, what kind of nations do we have, what's the politics of it. So there's a lot of information that we could make use of, but there was enough freedom. So different to maybe, I don't know, doing a Tolkien game where a lot of people have a lot of opinions about SpellForce. There's a lot of opinions, but it's much freer. And that was a chance for us to kind of envision the game that we wanted. And the other part is it's about mages, and SpellForce is kind of a very magical world. So the world building itself already integrates a lot of the kind of aspects that we wanted to bring out in the game. So that was a perfect match. And then, as I know, it's kind of still personal. So I'm really, really happy to sort of come back 20 years later and go like, hey, what's happened in the world? And, maybe I can shake it again a little.
Awesome. Yeah. So you described the game as a 4X RPG kind of hybrid. Can you tell us a little bit about why you call it that?
Because for lack of a better name, there's a lot of aspects of like classic 4X in it, but we didn't want to do another 4X. Like there's brilliant 4Xs out there that all kind of follow the same formula. So there's always, for example, there's your expansion. And a lot of the 4X games, for me, if I play them, and I love to play them, they end before the game actually finishes, because they end at a time when the balance of power has switched and you know that you've won. Like, it's just a matter of time at that point. And that has to do with a sort of territorial expansion, because the world is not infinite, and at some point you just own the majority of the map. And this map painting thing is something that we wanted to have a twist on. So we still think 4X is kind of a great blueprint, but I think the kind of innovation in it has usually been in doing more depth, or doing more win conditions or something. And we wanted to have something that feels a little different. So what we do is we've got your mage in your tower. You've got a dominion around it, but you're not taking land. As a mage from the get-go, you're not interested in conquering the land. That's not something that you care for. You want the best power, the greatest. You want to be the greatest mage. You want to find new spells, new ingredients for your crafting. You want to maybe go on quests, find adventures that bring you deeper, bring you more knowledge, There's a lot of research you do in your spell book, and you control certain points. You want to go to the power source of the magical power. You want to maybe go to the ingredient, or maybe you want to harvest ore because you need it for your craft. But you don't want to own a city. Like, as a mage, you're not interested in that. So this from the get-go changes kind of the concept of it. So while the mechanisms are similar, it makes it more of an adventure game, because you're having sort of discrete goals where you go, I want to go there, I want to have this specific thing. I'm going to send my armies there, I'm going to send my troops there, but I'm not going to go take it and then have to, I don't know, hold the ground there, or build a wall, or there's no borders. Enemies can pop up anywhere. It's not like, oh, this is my central part, and here's, everything is peaceful because I killed everybody else. And then there's the borders, and this is where things happen. Which also in a lot of the 4X games, it feels like you move out, and then whatever is in the middle it's not boring, but the challenge is gone. And what we are doing is, you always, like, the enemy can pop up next to you, literally, because you don't have a safe space, and that always keeps you on your toes. So there's a lot of sort of things you need to do slightly differently. So even if you're used to 4X games and the base way of doing it, build up your stuff, build up your armies, improve it, you'll have to think differently when it comes to defending, when it comes to how do you cover territory, when it comes to how far away do you send your expedition troops. And that's another thing, that's maybe the last aspect, that we wanted, that adventure part, the role-playing part. That was really important to us, because it's a strong legacy of the SpellForce stuff, and it also helps us to tell stories. And that means you want to send off your heroes and your armies to faraway places in order to have adventures and quests. And usually in a classic 4X, you don't do that. Like, if you send out your scout, yes, but then you lose them, and that's gone. You're always going to go with your main force. So you're always like a slow behemoth that just sort of rolls on. And for us, it's more like you're sending off small bunches of troops, stacks of troops, and you can send deep into foreign territory. Actually, that's part of your exploration, is going to be, hey, what's around the corner? What's there? What's over there? Oh, what's that building? What's in there? Oh, there's an adventure there. How can I get there? What do I need to do? And that just drags you much further out. But it also means you have that single stack that goes like, oh, I need to be able to defend myself, and then obviously you have magic to help you and stuff like that. But it's a much more agile game as well in that sense. I've talked a lot for your simple question. I'm sorry, but it was like, that's all the essence. There's a lot of things happening about why we did it the way we did it.
No, I think that's great too, and I believe you're touching on a lot of things that we at Explominate have always touched on, just the hope of evolution for the 4X genre, and I think that you guys have taken this in a really awesome and fun direction and unique direction, and quite frankly, I've had a lot of fun with it. So I'm really eager to show off gameplay. Are you good to go with that, Jan?
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and get to that. All right, folks, welcome to SpellForce Conquest of EO. I am joined by Jan here. He's going to be with me as we play along for about an hour. And, maybe he'll give me some pro tips and tell me what I'm doing wrong. But we'll go ahead and get started in our campaign here.
Doing right.
Yeah, a little cheerleading would be great too. So you guys just kind of, highlighted the Necromancer class in a recent promo video. And so I'm eager to actually play as the Necromancer, because I feel like the mechanics there are really kind of unique to its own archetype. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a Necromancer here. But as you can see, you can also play as an Alchemist, which plays very differently, and then the Artificer, which also plays very differently. So, but I guess you'll have to wait until you get it to check those out. And then we have 3 different starting locations. The first one being kind of the default one. Is that, would you say, the default starting location?
Yeah, that's kind of the one that has the most kind of immediately accessible stuff. You, in the long run, you're paying off with it not having the most interesting stuff, but the other ones are Alluvian and Drake are better suited to further gameplay. Also, they're actually better suited to the Alchemist and the Artificer, respectively, because Drake, for example, has a lot of ore and metals, and that's what the Artificer needs. And you need a lot of people that you can kill and then make into undead. So Golden Fields is actually a good place for you.
That's the name of the game, killing people and making them undead. All right, I like it. So we have 5 different difficulty classes here. We'll go straight down the middle on the balanced, and we'll start a campaign. All right. And as we start, I'm going to read off some of the narrative here, because the great and awesome thing I think about this game is that it introduces the game through a tutorial. So I'll read the beginning, and then as we get a little bit further along, maybe I'll let you guys read your own. But when a message from your master told you he had discovered a way to channel the Allfire and urged you to come to his tower, you quickly gathered your entourage and set out. The letter contained little more than his note and a small flute, exquisitely carved and bearing your master's sigil. He seemed to fear running afoul of the Circle of Mages, the most powerful covenant of magic users on Io. His tower, now before you, bears signs of a terrible battle having raged there. So we'll go to the tower immediately. Jan, I really appreciate the way that the game introduces gameplay mechanics through a narrative design. Is that kind of always what you had hoped to do?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a lot of 4X games, strategy games, you need to know a lot of things before you can make meaningful decisions. And we wanted to inform you, but we didn't want to have sort of a dry run where you go, oh, go left, go right, take this, where it doesn't really mean anything. So we try to put you in the same position as your character. Like, the character doesn't know about the world, he doesn't know about a lot of things. He comes into a situation freshly, and so do you. And so we tell you a story, and the more we tell you about it, gradually we introduce new features to you, but they make sense narratively as well. So you get, you're more involved in it, and it feels like a discovery as opposed to a lesson in, how to use it, manual 101.
I love it because I hate the tutorials that show you WASD moves you forward and backwards. I'm like, all right, cool. That's every game ever. So clicking,
Exactly.
Zooming out.
If people want to know that, we've got first time screens. So every time you do something for the first time, that's meaningful. There's going to pop up a first time screen. You can of course just disable them because most of the stuff is pretty standard. And where we deviate or where there's something that you wouldn't immediately realize, that's when we give you that extra hint, essentially.
Perfect. I love it. All right, so the corpses and debris marking the fight inside the great hall of your master's tower fill you with grief for him. Instinctively, your hands go to the flute he sent you with his letter. You trace the fine carvings with your fingers, and memories of your time here flood your mind. Suddenly, the flute seems to hum and vibrate, and a small sound emanates from it. So I'm going to examine the flute. The sound morphs into a flute melody, and, with it, shadowy images slowly begin to appear across the hall. Figures take form, becoming more solid and taking the shape of two groups facing each other, weapons drawn. You see your old battle master leading one of the groups. This must be the battle for the tower. All right, so I think this is really cool too because it is a narrative way to kind of give you a quick combat tutorial. It's pretty difficult to lose this first mission, although it's possible, I'm sure. But it does give you an idea of what you're going to expect from battles coming forward. So I really appreciate this. All right, and with that said, we have our combat here. Tell me a little bit about combat since we are starting here.
So mostly in combat, what we're trying to do or what we're trying to achieve is we want you to have a fast-paced, turn-based combat, which is kind of a contradiction, but we are trying to actually make it smooth. So the basic principle is always you've got 3 action points. 2 of them can be spent for movement, up to 3 of them. That's one of those first-time screens that tell you a little bit about that. Up to 3 can be used for attack, and what we do have is what we call the commitment system. So you're committing to a specific action. If you're attacking with all your against the selected unit. You're using up all your remaining action points. If you're casting a spell, you're probably using up all your remaining action points. So you really need to think about what you're doing. But it also makes the battle run faster. So it's not these I've got one action point here and another action point there. And most of the time you want to focus on a target anyway. So we find that usually this is kind of something that you want. But you can also play around with it. Because the melee system means that the enemy strikes back when you strike it, but it also takes one of their actions. So you can effectively, by attacking them, actually eat up their actions. So if you have a majority of small units against a big one, you can actually sort of whittle it down by just making it unable to act. And there's all kinds of stuff like flanking. You currently see that the units that you've got there have these little yellow arrows, and that is their orientation. So this is where the area they're looking at, and if you attack anywhere where there isn't a yellow arrow, then you flank them, you get a flanking bonus, and then you can attack again from the other side because they turn to you. So there is a lot of depth in it, but we also wanted it to be relatively fast. Another part of that is the environment. Like if you look at what there was an angry demon there spewing fire to one unit. But if you look at the battlefields, all of them are actually handcrafted. So we don't have generated maps because we want the environment to be part of the kind of tactics on the map. So in this case, for example, you see you've got this sort of middle area where you can push against the enemy, but you've also got the sides, and the AI as well as the player usually uses these extra paths to flank people and do stuff like that, and then it becomes kind of a whole game around that environment as well. And of course, we've got different kinds of damage, as you can see here. So oftentimes it's also interesting to see which particular type of damage the enemy is susceptible to, or what it can resist. And between all those elements, and there's a lot of like little elements in themselves, every combat becomes pretty different depending really on the environment, on your enemy, on your troop. The way you put your stack together is, who are you facing, and that's what we're trying to have a fast battle that still has enough depth to actually keep you interested and keep it fresh for a long while.
Right, so here kind of highlights the flanking. So as Jan mentioned before, I use these Phantom Warriors here to draw their attention here. So now their yellow arrows no longer point towards these Phantom Warriors, and I'm able to flank them for extra damage. All right, and unfortunately, that's all the action points I have. So
yeah, well, it's in a situation that I've just mentioned where the enemy attacks you and they essentially take out your action points. But the good thing about that is your phantoms are pretty resistant to physical damage, so they can take a lot of beating from those demons. But then when it's your turn, as you can see, the phantom to your right, that's been attacked by 2 enemies that can't do anything. But yeah, it gives you the chance to then soak up that damage and flank it. You have an attack of opportunity if you leave their zone of control. So probably you want to take them out first.
Right. Yeah. If I move out, so what I like about that is that it pops up to let me know that if I move this ice golem here, there'll be an attack of opportunity made by these guys here. So I don't want to move them. So I want to do what I can to maybe destroy them so that I don't get hurt. Of course, luck is not on my side today, so
yeah, close, but they'll die in attacking you probably, because you also get the counter attack. Of course, they actually died from the burns, so there's ongoing damage, and yeah, you managed to take them out. I think you'll win this.
Yeah, drawing my attention there, and then now that no. I was hoping
he's turned around because if he's got 3 arrows, so his field of vision is a little wider than the usual guys. But yeah, you got him in the end.
All right.
And so this is supposed basically it's kind of a backtrack or sort of a vision of what happened, and you just sort of played out the battle that happened in the tower.
Right, so you are filled with hope and a touch of confusion as your master's forces dispatch the intruders. Then another robed figure enters the picture. With a leisurely wave of their hand, your master's remaining forces helplessly dissolve into ash. Silent cries of agony etched into their faces. The ashes scatter to the wind, and the robed figure walks towards the stairs as if nothing happened. Follow them! And all of a sudden, the figure turns on you, raises their hand, and the flute's illusionary image vanishes abruptly. Did the magic end? Or did the robed figure cast some sort of abjuration to prevent you from being spied upon? Or to prevent being spied upon? You find yourself nervously looking around for any sign that the robed figure is still here, but the tower lies empty now. So we'll enter the tower. Impressions of the fighting still play on your mind as you slowly walk up the dented stairway. The tower, damaged and deserted, still retains your master's presence somehow, wheeling you onward. Whatever happened here, you will not be forgotten. You are sure there is more to discover. Your master was always adept at hiding his secrets, but you are determined to uncover them. So we'll set up in the tower. So you take stock. The entry hall's golden chandelier has been stolen, and its soft carpets are gone. Your master's tower has not just been attacked, but also robbed, it appears. On a closer inspection, there are several tracks out of the tower. Traces of torn fabrics and dropped cutlery lead to a goblin camp not far from here. So let's go get those thieves. All right. So now we have a new zone of control, as you can see. So now that we've taken control of this mage tower, we have our zone of control that's expanded. It's basically presented through this like blue like almost territory marking here.
Yeah. So
And
the
then-
zone of control, maybe that's one of the principles of the game that we're trying to achieve, because we're trying. I mean, it's got the systems or the elements of a 4X game, but we're trying to put a twist on most of those things. So your dominion or your zone of control is not a possession. It's not a hard border. It's not something that belongs to you. But within it, you are able to draw from any resources that are within it. Unless, of course, those resources don't belong to you yet. Because, for example, the Goblin camp, there's probably goblins there, so can't make use of that. And if there is an overlapping zone of control, then you can't do that. But it's important that this is not a fixed border. This is not your territory. This is just an area that you can draw from. So that's a little different, and we'll later see what that difference is as well when you try to expand your dominion.
Right. So now that we have our tower, we can go ahead and click on this UI element where we can start to build rooms for our tower. And I know with the Necromancer, it's very important that we build this crypt first. So we'll go ahead and get started. That's going to allow us to basically craft or raise the undead. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. All right. And then I know, Jan, you've mentioned before too that like as you progress through the game, you'll get options and basically the unlocking new rooms. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so as the tower grows, you will get more. Essentially, you currently just can have the lowest level. The tower can grow and progress throughout the game, and as you do that, new empty slots become available, and you find new rooms either by befriending cities. There's spells or research you can do to find new rooms, and these rooms will give you all kinds of modifiers. They'll give you bonuses. They allow you to train troops at a higher level. They allow you to draw more magical energy, research. So there's all kinds of rooms, and then you can furnish those rooms, or you can sort of build them out. So every room can be modified. That's almost like a recipe again, where you put in specific ingredients, and then that room gets additional abilities. And this way, you can individualize your tower and decide, what you want to focus on, what you want to build.
Super cool. And so this is an opportunity to kind of showcase or highlight the event system, which I think is also really cool because a lot of the choices actually do matter. And in this case, I could go straight for attacking the looters, which are these group of goblins that have stolen everything from my tower, or I can hail them. And maybe as a necromancer.
This is a special thing because there's several options that can happen to you when you enter the Goblin camp, and this is actually when the Goblin camp has also been attacked by humans. So you see a battle in progress essentially, and the humans are looting the camp. So somebody arrived before you essentially.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah, I haven't actually seen this.
I know you thought that was the same Goblin camp because we already looked at that, and there are several options that can happen when you enter. But then there's always different options and meaningful options. So we don't have there's not a right or wrong in our decisions. There's not a good or evil, and there's not a right or wrong. So all of those decisions are viable. All of them give you different things. And obviously, if you choose a more violent one, often it's more rewarding in terms of things like getting extra loot. But it also might be a problem because you annoy the humans living in the area, or it's usually whatever you choose is a viable option, but it has consequences.
Right. So this is
down to your playing style.
Yeah. And so this is new, right? So I haven't actually seen this before. So like Jan said, it seems like maybe humans are there before. And as a necromancer, I kind of feel like, I want to maybe have some dialogue with goblins. So I'm going to hail them. And the looters stop what they're doing when they see you and draw their weapons suspiciously. So basically they're telling me to go away. So the people there, the humans there, are trying to take care of these goblins here, and I don't really think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make sure that they don't interfere too much with my potential new friends here. So we'll see about that, and then we're gonna go to combat. All right, and so this brings a screen that I really appreciate as well. It's a screen that I think is extraordinarily accurate, and one of my bugbears with 4X games is that a lot of these kind of like pre-combat screens are sometimes inaccurate to a fault, where if they say something like, oh yeah, decisive victory or close victory, you end up sometimes losing those altogether. And I know that's still a chance here, but most of the time these things are very accurate and they tell you exactly what's going to happen, really, which I appreciate. So if I were to auto resolve this with this particular setup here, it appears now that I would lose this goblin, right? That's what's going on.
Yeah. So that's that. There's a high chance to do that. He might survive, but we'll tell you exactly which unit is or which units are in danger if you auto resolve. I mean, in this case, usually, obviously, if you start the battle yourself, you have a better result, especially because it's in your tower sphere of influence. So there was a little shield there that below enchantment, and the enchantment means you've got a bonus on your power. So you're better off here anyway.
Right. So down here, you can see it again, the same little shield within your domain. So it gain additional willpower, gain additional armor, and gain additional damage, which of course is going to be good all around. So we will move our guys into somewhat tactical positions here and let them come to us. So they were quick to come out of that gate there, which doesn't normally happen.
Aggressive. That's also AI has different stances, and depending on the whom you encounter. We played a battle last time where they just sort of stood behind the palisades, and we're happy to let you try and get to them. But these guys, they are an aggressive AI, which means they want to be mano a mano and really go to town with you. Probably underestimating you. Oh, Soul Caged, you're lucky. The Necromancer minion that you have there, that's a tier 2 unit, so it's a little stronger than your average unit you get at a starter unit. And they have a special ability which is called Soul Caging, and that means they can collect the souls of the fallen, which is quite important. We'll see later on why that's useful. But essentially, they're harvesting souls for you. So having a minion and killing somebody or wounding somebody with a minion gives you a chance of taking their soul, and that's kind of the bread and butter of what the Necromancer does.
Let's see if we can flank them a bit here. And then once they've... Oh, nope. Don't have any more action points for them. So I might lose... I don't know if they're going to turn around and attack this group here. Because if they do, they'll kill them, unfortunately. And they did. That's a smart thing to do. All right.
Yeah. AI is, as you said, I mean, that's exactly the Goblin that we said you would be losing.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's actually... I mean, in open field, it's pretty hard to do something specific about it, like luring them away or something, and they're a pretty strong unit, so losing one is not a shame. But the other one got a level up, so
yeah, there you go. So there's a trade-off here. So I've gained some ingredients. We're going to talk about ingredients as soon as we wrap this up here, but we've also gained a level 2, so we'll talk about that as we get out. So the Not Quite camp is littered with goblin corpses. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to save my goblin friends here, but we got some glyphs and a lot of gold. So where are the rest of the possessions? We're going to look through. So I remember we're talking to one of the goblins now.
Yeah,
and
so some of them have hidden in the tents, and now they're coming out and they're talking to you.
All right, so yeah, they're telling me, well, they know my master, so they're giving me some of the stuff that they collected back to me. So they're telling me where I can go, and there's a couple of spots here now that we'll be able to go and grab those little loot boxes there. All right, so we have the ability to level up our goblin here. And with this, it's a system I really appreciate because there's always a choice between a couple things that are usually very difficult choices in my opinion. So in this case, we have the option to choose from willpower, which I know we haven't really discussed too much yet, but it plays into the morale system. And then we have armor, and these guys are kind of they're kind of they're almost like my damage shields here. So I'm gonna take them. Add some armor to them to make them a little bit more capable. Oh, they've also gained a 2nd level. Very cool. So now we have the option between Lucky, which is always going to give them maximum damage, or +1 to speed. I like Lucky. I think Lucky is one of the better upgrades, so I'm going to take that as well. And now up in the upper left-hand corner, we have the ability to hire, since we have now... So we'll come back out for a second. But now this is a goblin camp, and with that goblin camp, we can now recruit some new units from that goblin camp. So for the small price of 2 gold, that's 2 gold upkeep.
That's 2 upkeep. So if you train them in your own domain, they don't cost something to actually finish, but they need feeding. So you'll have to pay upgrade for that. When you hire units in cities or something, you have to pay for them. So the advantage, obviously, of training them at home is is that they're less costly to produce, but it'll take a little more time because you need to train them.
Right.
Otherwise, goblins don't do anything.
Yeah, they'll just sit around and play with their money. So, all right, we're talked about. We briefly mentioned the inventory, and some of the items that we'll end up using for our necromancy are here now. So this will become much more important here in a few turns. We'll come back to it, but basically, this is where you'll see all the things that you accumulate through your battle spoils and through your events and stuff like that. So these will
In this
again.
case, you actually got something cool, which is glyphs, and glyphs can also be equipped with the units you have. So they can be used as ingredients, but they can also be. Glyphs is something that the artificer usually would create.
Right.
So having those is actually a treat for you because they can give you extra abilities or extra stats.
Well, these guys are important to us, so we'll go ahead and give them attacks that inflict bleeding and a +3 to speed in case we need to get out of there.
So actually, speed is good for ranged. It's a good thing for ranged units because they can get into position without getting into danger, and that's if they can move around a little more. They actually being nimble on the battlefield is actually good for missile units.
I meant to do that. That's why I did that. All right,
You knew that.
Yeah, so we're gonna move into these two loot. I don't know if that was one of them or not, but we had a couple loot boxes that they showed us. We're gonna go ahead and send our units there and pick up whatever's in those crates. All right, so our crypt is constructed, which does now open an aspect of gameplay that we can talk about once this is over. So again, I'm not going to read all these now. You're more than welcome to read them, pause the game and read them. I'll kind of skim over them and let you know what's going on. But basically, it's talking about how our crafting room is now ready to go. And that we're now looking through our master's old grimoire, and our desire and need to decipher the whole thing is important because we're going to need to obtain new spells and learn more about what's going on in this world. And so everything needs further study. We're going to have quite a time here trying to look through the book, trying to figure out what's being said and how we can develop new spells. So we've gained 10 research, which is going to kickstart our research. And we can come over here. Now we have our first quest, which is and this will help us, basically decipher this book more. But we also have the ability now too to go ahead and start researching a variety of different spells. And I mean, I'm not trying to give away too much. It's pretty early, but I think this enchanted wisp is probably your best bet first off, because that wisp might be coming into a pretty big important role here soon. So we'll go ahead and invest in that. And on top of that too, we now have the necromancy UI tab open. And so this is where the crafting system that we've mentioned a couple times comes into play, and we are able to raise our dead minions. So this is where the necromancer thing is really cool, because instead of where the artificer would create these glyphs, as you mentioned before, or the alchemist would create a variety of different potions and items, the necromancer creates units. And so we're able to use one of our souls here. We can either drag it over here or just right click it. And then we come over to our ingredients, and we can now right click one of these to bring to life ghouls. And we will do so. And all that's very nicely displayed over here on the left-hand side. So we'll craft them. And we'll also select a spell, which will be Aid. As Jan has told me before, Aid works really well for it. It gives you bonus to regeneration through the daily regeneration speed. Each of your troops or each of your armies regenerate every turn, and they have various bonuses given to them through either spells like this, or if they're in towns or something like that. And as we're kind of already chipping away at the health points of our armies, we're going to go ahead and ready that up. And we'll come over here, grab some treasury, grab some more, and then I think we're going to have to come over here for that too. All right. Another turn. And now our aid is ready, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be pretty close. Yeah, we're almost close to full health here, so I'm not going to use it just yet. And we almost made it there, didn't quite. Take another turn here. and an event pops up. So what are our next steps, really? So now it starts to kind of talk about what is going on in this world and the circle, basically the circle of mages that are going to be your primary antagonist. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to give too much away here, but we're going to talk more about them or you will see more about them too as you progress through the game. What exactly is the circle? Well, the circle of mages is the covenant of the most powerful magi in EO, and they're doing some things. They're doing some things that aren't so great. So, and they're pretty dangerous, and we need to figure out what we need to do and how to do it without getting hurt. So we're going to take proper stock of our master's laboratory. And oh man, so the villagers plundered the tower after it was abandoned too. I think we should probably check into that. So there's a hamlet nearby that we should go check in on because they may have taken some of my stuff as well. All right, so the village's inhabitants eye you with the air of hostility when you arrive. And again, this is another situation where there are very different outcomes depending on how you want to handle this. If you're role playing a bit, you might want to play to what you think your particular magi or your particular playstyle really, or whatever it is you want to enact here is in accordance with. So for me, I'm a role play a little bit. We have Necromancer. I don't think any Necromancer that I've ever heard of or have met has ever been a really nice guy. So we're going to scare them into submission. I mean, I could, maybe tell them that I have meant no harm, but I do mean them harm because I want them their souls. So
let's be serious. I mean, they're just undead waiting to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, they're just All right, so we'll scare them into submission. And so the villagers remain defiant, which is not good for them because they're going to return these things to me or pay their price in blood. And I think that's what they want. So we're going to slay them all and take everything we want.
Which is fine. I mean, it sounds a little harsh, but honestly, it's an economic decision.
Yeah, exactly. Now, so we're not quite as strong as I'd hoped. We're a little bit closer to, maybe possibly losing this than I would like to be in, but unfortunately, this is where we're at. So we're going to go ahead and start this. The Cutthroats are a tier 2 unit, so they're a bit more powerful than your regular tier 1 units, and so they're going to be a little bit more difficult than our initial fighting here. So we'll let them do their thing. And we'll set up behind this spot right here.
Yeah, so this is one of the things in the battlefield that we mentioned. There's a barricade there, which means missile has a harder time. So you got an extra protection against missile. So if those flamethrowers or even the cutthroats can also throw knives, they come at you, you have a better protection. Whereas shooting from behind cover, you will actually be safer. So in a direct trade of damage, you'll be better off. And this is your glyph already paid off because now this guy's bleeding, which means he gets damage every turn. So that's a pretty good start.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's all right. We'll go with that. All right, so it's likely that they're going to throw, but that damage was probably reduced because of the fact that I'm behind this here. And we'll finish these guys off. Oh no, we didn't quite finish them off like I'd hoped.
I think they'll not survive. Yeah, they've got 2 points. When it's their turn, they get the bleed, and then that's it. But you can use the bandage actually to heal the bleed for your goblins.
And then let's see. Oh man, it's going to be quite the even exchange here. So I'll hit them for 16, but they'll turn around and hit me for 10 to 15. We're going to do it.
Also, you need to take that because otherwise their points will be refreshed and they get 3 attacks out against you. So,
all right, so they bled out. Very good.
You don't want that.
Oh, it's so close, so close. We're gonna finish them off.
Excellent.
Very close.
This is how we like our battles. Like by the skin of your teeth, and then glorious victory. So that's much more rewarding than just wiping the floor with these guys.
Agreed. Yeah, no, it does make the victory a little bit more sweet. So. All right, we've gained some more items, which is great, and now we have another level up too. So, with our armed defenders dead, the remaining villagers cower in fear, and we are there to clear up any misconceptions about whose items those were, and we will level up our guy again. So we have +5 health, or we can +6 damage on flanking attacks. I think that's great, actually. I'm going to take that. So we'll be sure to make that guy our flanking guy. And we have our aid spell ready to go for that group that's now pretty beat up. We'll move our ghouls into that group as well. And we'll come back and also we have some more items, some new items in which we can maybe produce some more undead. So we now have items that are going to help us maybe create something different. Let me see if there's anything. So we can do a ritual dagger here. Drop that in there. And with that, we now have a +2 mana per day with the mana affinity bonus here. Yeah. We can also...
So in crafting undead, maybe we need to explain that. Every soul has a little bit of, or most souls have a little bit of life in them, which you can't really use as a necromancer. So you want to offset that with a little bit of death. And that's what you need to do at minimum to actually create an undead. You need to counter that life. But these ingredients have essences, so these little dots there. And if you get 3 of one of a kind, like death in this example, there is a new threshold, and that usually means there's a new and different unit for you to craft. So you made it to skeleton archers, which are quite, they're quite useful.
Excellent, yes, and they'll also give me mana per day, which I appreciate. So we'll go ahead and craft those, and we can come.
Undead, the necromancer plays differently, because the undead upkeep the upkeep for the undead you create is mana. So instead of gold, as the other troop types usually require, if you craft a lot of undead, you'll be really really stressed for mana, which means having a unit that creates its own mana is going to be a big boon on that end.
Yeah, for sure. And so we are now faced with some more choices, which I appreciate. And I've also noticed too through my playthroughs that the spells that are available are pretty random, so you don't always get the same spells. So I remember the last time we did this, we were actually presented with other spells, but this time we've gained the ability to research unnatural regeneration, which is going to be important for us because our undead don't necessarily like healing spells, but they do like this one.
They don't heal. They don't heal over time, so undead can't regenerate because they're already dead, so there's no healing. And if you don't have other ways like special skill for a unit or something, the regeneration spell is going to be very useful. It's also one of the more expensive spells for research, as you can see. So it takes a good while to research.
All right, let's go ahead and also hire some Goblin Brawlers since we don't have too many in the way of melee units right now. And we'll continue on. Oh, that's right. We've got some extra space here. So maybe let's look at these guys here. Now, there's 2 of them. I think we could probably take them on. Let's see how well. So it's a decisive victory, which means I will lose some units, and it looks like I'm going to lose my ghouls. And maybe
you're probably going to be okay because they're at full health. It's I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous because I like these guys and I don't want to lose them.
Well, they're not going to go away. So one of the things in the auto resolve screen is that if we tell you this is the unit that can die, that's the unit that can die. So your other guys can't. If you actually fight by hand, there's a chance the goblins might die because the AI will pick on it. But in this case, you're only risking the ghouls. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying this is the only one you risk.
No, let's see. Let's see if the RNG gods like me today. Let's go ahead. Oh, they did. All right. I appreciate that, RNG gods. So not only that, but they managed to level up. So we've won across the board here. All right, and so they actually will have 2 unique abilities that we haven't seen yet. That is Exploit Fear, which is going to add damage for those that are afflicted by fear, and then Mining Ore, which we haven't really talked about. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So there's we already talked about the necromancer needing souls. The artificer needs ores and metals. So these these things, the mountain copper. In order to craft their glyphs, and also metals are also ingredients, so you can, as a necromancer, you can still use them. And these units are able to harvest that. The same goes for plants. So there's specific plants and areas that can be harvested. These are usually used by the alchemist, and the ability to have that is kind of like the workers in other games. And it'll take a little while, and then you'll get your reward for that. There's also gold, for example, that can be mined. So.
All right,
now
so
comes the hard.
Yeah, right. So now we're talking about the Allfire, and basically this is like the source of all magic, right? And
Yeah.
we want to talk about it. Kind of starts to note that we're learning more about that within the grimoire, and so now we're learning about the Allfire, and we want to make sure that we can basically connect with its power. So it's telling me to find an Allfire, melding spot, and then send a wisp. And funny enough, I had already created that wisp. It's like
How wise of you.
Yeah.
As if you already knew what was happening.
Maybe. I'm not giving away my secrets though. All right. So what we'll do too, we're going to go ahead and we'll come back over here and hit the aid because I do want to regenerate my ghouls here before we start moving on. So while we're waiting for that to generate itself, we're going to go ahead and mine the ore here. And we'll get some items. We'll see what it's all about. We'll hit a couple turns. Oh, no, cancel that for a second because now we have skeleton archers. We only have 4 here. So maybe we move these guys back over here. And we bring in the skeleton archers. And we'll force the end turn. Bring our skeleton archers within our group here. And move these over here. So that we can actually just go ahead and mine with that unit there. So give it another turn.
Which would be a great secondary use for the undead because after a while, because again, they don't regenerate by themselves. So after a while, you don't really want to get them into combat because they're too squishy. And having them slave away because they're undead, they don't care. Slave away at mining is a great secondary use for these.
All right, we're going to go ahead and force this in just because I want to move these guys, and these guys have lost their movement. All right, so not from the all right, great. I didn't realize. Okay, so not far from your tower, you spot a hooded figure watching you from a crop of trees. So it sounds like danger is closer than I expected, and man, there's some people over there we might want to talk to. Maybe it can help us out, or maybe I kill them and take their souls. All right, so
let's also helping you out in a way. So
yeah,
either way.
All right, so now I'm approaching the Allfire's node, right? So I'm seeing this thing. It looks like it's swarming with power, and there's also things swarming around it. So we'll go ahead and kill those pests. If I was an alchemist, I might have been able to use an ointment to disperse them peacefully, but I'm not.
That's also something in the game throughout. If you have specific. Yeah, no, you have to go. You do it the hard way.
Yeah. So this is also great too. So in a case like this where I'm seriously more powerful, or at least moderately more powerful than my enemy here, I don't have to go through the whole battle because I'm being guaranteed a win here. And I mean, if you want to min max it for sure, you could start the battle and maybe lose less HP, but I'll go ahead and auto resolve because I know it's gonna win. All right, so I did lose a little bit from my ghoul here, but the other 2 guys have actually leveled up, which is great. So we've dispersed the giant insects, and now we are going to move in with our wisp and take care of that Allfire power there. We're going to meld with it and make it ours. All right, and we'll come back down here. We'll level up our guys. So now we have the option for 2 focus. What's focus do?
Focus is used for casting magical spells in combat, so different maybe than other games. You as a mage actually focus on the world level, so all your spells are cast on the world level, and in battle, your guys need to do the casting. And if you have specific abilities like the Goblin Shaman who can heal or cast healing spores, then that uses up focus.
All right.
And having more focus means you can cast spells more often.
I love it. So our skeletons have leveled up too. I think I want to give them some armor, make them a little bit more hard to deal with. Plus, as we've mentioned before too, they have this ribcage ability, which makes it very difficult, or a little bit more difficult for missile attacks to actually penetrate them. Because, I mean, if you got ribcages, it's a little bit harder to hit them.
Exactly.
All right, so I'll go with the armor in this case, kind of make them even more difficult. And we'll come over here and check out this militia outpost and see what we want to do here. All right, so there's some soldiers in here, and they're drunk. So what do? We don't really want to offer them money. I don't want to offer them money. I don't want them to have my money. And I could impress them with magic if I thought that was something I wanted to do. But quite frankly, I'm the bad guy here, so I'm going to admonish them for their dereliction of duty. And, you know, they laugh at me, so I'm not one to take too kindly to laughter. I will attack these guys here, so plus I need their souls. All right, so we have these cutthroats again, and this time it's telling me that I'm going to lose 2 of my characters, neither of which I want to lose. So I'm going to start this battle, particularly this one. I don't want to lose the minions because there's Soul Catcher here.
He's guaranteeing your future undead collection, so yeah. Luckily, these are also aggressive, so you have a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, I remember last time I played this same map, these guys stayed back, so that made it difficult for me. We're gonna go ahead and set up kind of almost like a wall here. Can we hit from here? We can. It's gonna be a bit of a damage. So basically, the range from which you're hitting from, you gain range penalties, or you know. So my attacks would be 8 to 12, but unfortunately, it's gonna be more like 4 to 6. And then we'll bring these guys.
Again, the bleeding pays off because giving them damage early on, that'll accumulate.
Ah, man, I really almost kind of want. So.
Yeah. It's hard. Like the goblins may not survive the first wave.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous. I think I almost want to pull them back.
Yeah, it could be advisable. I mean, depending on the difficulty level, the eye also goes for the weaker units. I think on balance, it's kind of inclined less towards focusing.
We'll
but
see.
on the harder difficulties, definitely the eye would pick out those that it can easily kill, or those that would be important. So,
all right,
in this case, you're lucky.
Yep. I got lucky.
Skeletons are immune to bleed, so you don't really care about the knives. And yeah, the fire guys aren't that meaty, so that's fine as well.
Let's see. They're going to retaliate for 11 to 16, so that should be all right.
Yeah.
Maybe I attack here first. No, that's going to retaliate even worse. So we're going to just jump in there with our... Oof, that was close. And I don't think I'm going to make it.
Well, you can now attack them from flank, so that's going to give you a little bit of an advantage.
Oh, man. All right.
And it's all fine, because you took all their action points.
Right, yeah. So
when it's their turn, they can't do anything.
And unfortunately for you, that means I am victorious. Heroically victorious.
Yeah, so this is one of the good examples of where, you know, sort of clever placement and gameplay obviously make a difference. So it's not about the sheer power level only. But again, we were close to the predicted results, so it's not that far off. But
yeah,
managed to beat the odds.
For sure, yeah. I mean, again, like you mentioned before, you know, close battles are more fun, honestly. You know, when you feel like you've made tactical decisions that lead to your victory, I feel like that just there's an extra sense of accomplishment there that, you know, I appreciate. So even if it wasn't the most sound tactics ever, I still did what I could to win it. So we have now the options for blinding powder, which applies blinded to enemy units in a radius of 1 tile or 1 hex. And also...
Actually, that's an area, so all around you, yeah.
Oh, okay, awesome. So an entire area around me. And then we also have serrated blades, which is all attacks can inflict bleeding, which is also really good. What does blinded do? So blinded actually reduces damage by 25%. And since these guys are kind of they're supposed to be our meat sponges, we're really not. Unfortunately, we're not using them that well because they need some life. We use the blinding powder because I think that once the units start to surround them, we'll try to blind them all. And with that, we'll go ahead and regenerate that group so that we can get our orcs back up to speed. And how close are we to our... Oh yeah, we still have quite a bit of research needed for our unnatural regeneration. All right, so now these guys are only 2 turns away from their melding, and then we're 3 turns away from our completion of the mining operations here. And that's where we're at. That's where the situation is. And we're going to leave these guys just where they are right now. So we'll go ahead and force the end turn. All right, we have some people encroaching. I'm not really a big fan of that.
Yeah. So this is one of the examples where your border doesn't really mean it's a fixed border. So if they take a specific area, a specific location, then you no longer are going to be profiting from whatever the area gives you. Unfortunately, these guys, yeah, they're easy.
All right, back to needing to some healing for my goblin, but that's okay. We'll let them sleep here for a minute. And this being a Hamlet, your units regenerate plus 50% more health here. So a good place to stick them when they're low on health. So we'll go back to selecting a spell. We'll have something readied up. I think what we'll do is we'll ready up some more aid just in case. And we will continue on with our turn here. All right, we've melded. That's great.
Yeah, so around every area that you meld with, or later on, where you can build specific buildings, your domain is going to expand around that. But we don't have a continuous domain, so it's not like you have to glue things together. It really is that point on the map, and we'll later on see why a continuous area isn't actually that important for us. It's just controlling specific resources at the point that you want them.
Right, so now someone's at my tower, and it sounds like in the middle of the night, so we're going to go ahead and open the door because why not? And it turns out this person is somebody that I might know, or I might have some, familiarity with. So they actually end up being an apprentice of my former master. So they introduce themselves, and we are kind of trying to figure out what happened to our master together. I'll skip to the end because it's very long, but basically the gist of it is that we have some like I said, we have a similar ancestry basically, and it's time for us to figure out what happened to our master. And it's more about the circle and what their plans are and what we have to do to stop them. So we'll skip to the end, and we're going to work together. So we're going to agree for our master's sake. And now, because there are some papers that they went on to talk to, the apprentice went on to talk to me about, there's some pages of my grimoire that I need to recover. So that's where we're headed. And as Jan mentioned before, when other area, basically this territory right here has now overlapped with my territory. So this zone of control now, from what I understand, right, is now negating this, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if there's a contested area, then it doesn't belong to anybody, so nobody gets the resource from it, so you get less mana. Even though the node is still melded with you, you can't really profit from it currently. That's what I meant with it's not borders. It's not a fixed thing, but it's an area of influence. And if somebody else extends their area of influence, then yeah, it's going to be nobody's.
Right. So we're gonna come over here.
Get rid of them.
Yep, exactly. And that's what we're all about. So we're gonna go ahead and knock these guys out real quick and bring them back over here. And with that, our Goblin Shaman has gained another level, so we can take 100% plus 100% daily regeneration, so doubling our daily regeneration, or plus 1 armor. And I think I'm going to give them the armor, as it's probably better long term, I think, in my opinion. Who knows? I don't know. So now we have our armies close there at the door of this Shaper Secret, or no, sorry, not Shaper Secret, the Stolen Pages quest line here. So we'll go ahead and, that's another thing too. We can come over here and now look at the Allfire Flow, which, yeah, I when I see this, I'm immediately reminded of Master Magic. So I can tell that there's some inspiration taken from that game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we like every good product that it's inspired by so many works that came before you, and I have played Master of Magic. I loved it, the old one. So obviously, if you're doing a 4X similar game where you are playing a mage, then yeah, there will be similarities. But the mechanics is also it's quite sound because it gives you a lot of quick choices that you can do, and you can also sort of have long term, because what we have here, the left part, the proficiency part, that's actually goes into your mastery, and mastery determines how far your domain stretches. So the more mastery you have, the more your domain branches out, and the bigger it will get. So that's kind of a long term thing. Whereas mana is obviously the power sources that you need to cast spells, and in your case actually also sustain you undead. So there's decisions that are important there.
Right. So
and also tell you, because next level is going to be at 10 mastery, so it'll let you know when you can expand your domain.
yeah, and now that we're here, we should actually come back and build our workshop so we can increase our gold per day.
Yeah, and you can also get 2 crafting slots. So if you wanted to mass produce undead, that would be a start.
Yeah, speaking of undead, let's go ahead and
one
do
of the
that.
things that we know that we have, which I really like, is, and I'm saying that about my own game, but it's actually true, is that there's really differences in gameplay, not just in style, but even in sort of the strategy, because you're able to quickly field a lot of undead units, like your little like berserk or something, where you get a lot of units out pretty fast. So that's, if you play the artificer or if you play the alchemist, you'll find it much harder to build armies that quickly. But then for the necromancer, you're actually throwing them to the meat grinder, because the undead don't heal. So you'll find yourself producing more of them, and then you're lacking mana, and that kind of gets its own dynamic. And the artificer and the alchemist play very differently, and they treat their troops very differently, and their build up is different. So that's really nice, because it's kind of ingrained in the character choices.
Right. Yeah, I
You've
love.
got an undead mage, which is a cool unit.
Yeah, and so this is something that I really like about the game, is that you can experiment with the variety of different ingredients that you are given, and you eventually will stumble upon different recipes that allow for new results. So in this case, I noticed that I had this glyph, and the XP bonus isn't super important to me. I know I could probably equip this on one of our units, but for the purpose of showing this particular mechanic off, I wanted to show you that I can drop this glyph in there for that 3 arcane, and now produce an undead mage, which is pretty cool. Would that also work if I did this? So nope, would not. All right, so
Yeah, you need to reach the threshold, right? So you need 3 dots in arcane to actually get there.
Right, and then as I get to 6 or 9, various different things unlock as well. So all right, we'll raise our undead mage here, and undead mages are pretty powerful, so I'm excited to see that, especially here in the early game. And we'll bring our main. Oh nope, we don't have any action points. I had intentions. Maybe they're going to attack me. Maybe they won't. Nope, they're not going to. All right, we finished. There we go. So we've mined. We've got some ore, some gold nuggets, even some experience points. All right, so maybe we take out this group with our secondary group here. And oof, yeah, so I don't really want to lose those guys. I'm going to try, although this battle will be much more difficult than any battle we've played before yet. So we've got a big old, what is this guy called again? I forgot.
That's a horned beast, I think.
Horned beast.
Horned beast or something.
Yep, yeah. Horned beast. He's a tier 2, and then we also have another. Oh, these guys are tier 1, but they're fire golems, and their ranged attack is pretty mean. So we're going to set up our melee units here as a distraction, and so healing spores. They also do something too, right? They probably berserk.
Yeah. So they heal for a low amount, but then you'll have more melee damage, but less armor. So
all right, that might be.
You can also cast it as just the berserk. So essentially, not caring whether you're spending healing, but I get a sense that you probably want to have a little bit of armor, because otherwise the horned beast is gonna mop the floor with you.
Yeah. So that's something we can use for sure, especially if we need the healing. All right, they stopped just in time. Some smart tactics there.
They're actually doing the same thing. They're having a meat shield, and then they're trying to attack from the distance.
Oh man, I don't like this. They're too smart. All right, so.
Oh, you've got the goblin brawler that can blind. So.
Yeah, it's kind of what I was thinking, is maybe driving him in there with the blind. But that, if I move into there, does that do away with all of my action points, or just 2?
No, that's just 2 of them, so you still have 1 action left.
And then this is just 1 action.
It also means the fire golems can't use missile. So if you're directly next to a missile troop, they can't use their missile attack.
Well,
unless they get away from you.
Let's do it.
Oh,
right.
okay. The effect is over there to the right. So you found another bug. Congratulations.
I saw that. I was like, we blinded the trees over there.
So this is a preview. So this is why we're happy to have something like that happen now, because I can note that down and we'll fix that.
All right. So what do we do here? Site penalty. We have issues here, but this one we don't have site penalties with. Let's go ahead and try to take out this horned beast. We'll drive.
That's going to give you a cool soul if you survive it.
Yeah, let's see. That's a big if, right? So, all right, we'll bring you in here, and I wonder if not. Yeah, we might leave you back a little bit just so that we can possibly use those spores if needed.
Yeah.
All right, let's see how this goes.
Yeah. See, the missile guys needed to get away from you, so you got an attack of opportunity. And fortunately, your morale holds. Maybe that's a good time to talk about morale, because the horned beast has just had a shout, a war cry, and that can lower morale. And if morale gets to a certain point, it affects your combat abilities. In the positive side, if you're confident, you actually get more damage. So that's a welcome plus, and actually might end you either running away, but that also goes for the enemy. So if you have enemy units that are susceptible to fear, or that you're influenced in some way, and that happens every time a unit sees another unit getting damaged. So that doesn't only apply to the unit that's in combat, but it applies to every unit around it. So if you see your other guys in the army being killed, then obviously your morale will go down, and you can actually win battles by just scaring people away, because at some point your enemy will just flee. You can also lose battles by your guys running away, especially goblins, unless their willpower is strong, are inclined to flee in battle.
Hold on. Thankfully,
the most inopportune moment usually.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thankfully, I was able to pull that one off. Surprisingly,
cool.
So I've gained a twisted horn, which I'm sure is going to be great, and then a greater tormented soul, which is from this soul cage that I grabbed from that. So definitely opens up some things here. So we're going to go ahead and give them, between the two of them, I think I'm going to give them daily regeneration.
Yeah, they tend to be wounded all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And then we'll come over here and take these stolen pages back. All right, so stay away or we will end you. And that's really not the response I like. So we're going to go ahead and attack them because we don't fear them. And to your point earlier about I want to go ahead and start, even though it says I could do this without any losses, I wanted to show this particular battlefield, because when you mentioned handcrafted battlefields, I really appreciate the variety of them too. I mean, it's insane to think they are all handcrafted because there's so many different ones.
Yeah, we've got over 60, I think we're going on 70 by now.
Wow, I love it.
And we wanted them to be specific. So when you go into the Dark Tower, it really is a Dark Tower. If you're going on a bridge, then it really is a bridge. And obviously there's more generic ones, like, okay, you're in the woods, so there's a couple of variations of those. But it also, for us, it was important that you actually sense that the battlefield, is a place rather than just a randomly generated couple of hexes.
Yeah, I love it. I think, especially ones like this where they feel really unique, and this feels, appropriately foreboding and dark, and like a tower should. So we are going to do what we can. Let's see what they react, because I've done the same thing. Set up my meat shield here. I've got my archers and stuff in the back. The great thing is now that I have Yoneth. Yeah, I'm going with the Yoneth. Yoneth the Necromancer. We've got raise undead ability, so as we start to accumulate corpses, we can now raise undead to increase our army size, which I appreciate. Oh, great, they've been drawn out. That doesn't always work out for me, so now we're just going to kind of pummel these guys here, these Medusas. So they're tier 3, which is very strong, but hopefully we'll be able to wear them down with some attacks from afar.
Superior numbers will probably win the day for that.
Yep. Just numbers. All right, so that is one heck of a retaliation.
Yeah.
Maybe now we can't attack from no, I've done myself in a little bit here. Because if I take this movement, which would give me some flanking bonus, they're going to be able to hit with the attack of opportunity. I think it's worth it only because now I'll be able to hit them. No, I didn't get that either. No. Oh man.
Well, they're currently looking. Yeah, they're some of the units have several directions. So it's not only just the front, but it's like the front half. So you need one more step to actually flank them.
All right,
But I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, that worked out
Your
well.
units are very confident.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm inspiring confidence, but I. All right, I think they might die. Oh, they're not going to. How did that happen? I'm lucky. All right, we'll finish these guys off with my mage here. I'm gonna bring these back so that they don't die, and maybe even bring these ones back too. And we'll move up, and we'll have a war of ranged units here.
I mean, they are placed behind a barricade again, so they've got an advantage because they've got cover. You've got the advantage because your skeletons are quite resistant to missile, and you might even get next turn you can get the mage cast the corp, and then you've got a melee unit that you don't really need to keep. So,
all right. The animations are great, by the way. Love them. All right, so now we have walking corpses that we can start to move in there and offset their ability to hit me with the ranged attack. We might not.
They survived that long. You might have killed them before that.
Yeah, they're really not doing much damage to my.
No, skeletons are quite resistant.
And we'll finish them off just for the sake of knowing that they were useful. We'll let them finish it off. All right.
I mean, in other situations now you've got a 5-2 advantage, but in a situation where there's about equal numbers, those extra corpses or ghouls that pop up are really, really useful because they absorb damage. You can put them in the front, and it'll just take actions away from the enemy. So.
All right, so this goes on to talk about how basically, we're learning more about the Allfire, and the Circle Mages and the rival and the Allfire kind of, they're at odds and stuff, and basically, the story gets really deep. I really like it. I think that it's an incentive. Not only is the gameplay itself an incentive to keep playing, but to learn more about how the story unfolds is really a lot of fun too. And now we're brushing into the next gameplay mechanic that kind of unveils itself, where you can now research the ability to, set up the ability to basically take off with your mage's tower. So Jan mentioned it a bit before, but the zone of control thing becomes really important because a lot of these areas, a lot of these spots that we're gathering resources from are all finite. So this watchtower, I think is that 9 turns before it's over?
Yeah, that's 9 turns that you can still get the resources from, and after that, it's going to be gone. And the same goes for almost every other resource in the game. So you cannot stay in a certain place for long. I mean, you can stay there, but it won't generate anything for you. And that obviously becomes a big motivation into moving out into the world and finding new stuff. And that's kind of what we wanted to do. When you play a 4X game, and I'm sure this is something that you experienced, it gets a little stale after a while. Like the coolest phase is when initially or at the start, when you don't know the world, when you don't have control of everything, and when things really matter, when the loss of one unit is really scary to you, and when you're weak enough that things get interesting. As the game progresses, often you'll find that, I find that either I already know I've won, like I'm 2/3 through the game, I know I've won, I just need to play it out because I already sort of painted the whole map, or it's just going to be more of a management churn. So you get into a point where it becomes a chore more than the exciting thing. And this is what we wanted to preserve. We wanted to have that initial experience of going into a new area, finding new stuff, getting into new dangers, encountering new monsters. That's something that we wanted to preserve. And so giving you the ability to move your headquarters essentially, but also forcing you to, because after a while there's nothing for you there where you started. That's something that keeps that gameplay fresh, and that also pushes you towards adventure. And that's what we wanted to have, that kind of experience for you.
Right. So while you were explaining that, which is awesome, by the way, I think that just the fact that you're so aware of the maybe the pitfalls and the shortcomings of the genre makes me very happy and excited, because I think a lot of people have always kind of just gotten back into what worked, right? The formula that's always worked, and they haven't really tried to veer outside of that formula. And I love that you are. But as you were explaining that, we actually showed two things. First of all, there was a random event that occurred as I moved this army. And so we now have a quest to go check out these mushroom circles. And secondly, now that we have an apprentice, we have, I forgot his name, sorry. Yaneth, that's right, Yaneth. Yaneth, he now has the ability to build lodges, which is individual to the apprentices themselves. And they can build one lodge per apprentice, and that expands your zone of control as well. So not only once I get this lodge will I'll be able to harvest the gold here, but once I clear out this spot, I'll be able to, looks like, recruit something, and also, again, some more gold. So that's how we start to branch out. And of course, once we move our mage's tower here, we'll start to be able to pick up and move where we need to in order to gain more resources, and so on and so forth. There's just a couple things I want to show before we wrap things up. So I want to try to get to that. There's a city over here. I know that because I've played it enough. I wanted you to talk about the cities a little bit. Let's see if we can get up here to where it is. There we go. All right. So can you tell us a little bit about how, like, what the cities do and what their role is in this game?
Yeah. So I mentioned, I mean, we're not a king. We're not taking territory. We're not building up an empire. So cities are like important potential allies. They're places where you can trade. They're places that you can find new adventures. So most of the regions, like the greater regions, have sort of a central city that belongs to them. And you also have reputation. If you notice, there's a little shield up above that. There is that reputation bar. Now, we haven't talked about that before, but maybe some viewers saw that there is these little gray shields were popping up, like you've lost reputation, you've gained reputation. And back when you killed the guys in the village, that really didn't sit well with the humans in the region. So you lost reputation there. The more reputation you have in a city, the easier it is to get access to better resources from them, to buy better troops from them, can hire troops there, and also to get specific region adventures that will tell you a little bit more about the story in the region. So there's a sort of a continuous theme to those, but also obviously then allow you to gain reputation because you're doing the city a favor. But it's not something that you have to do. So there's other ways for the Necromancer. For example, he can actually use cities to levy troops. So he can essentially force people to work for him. And he can later on he has a mentalism spell. That's kind of the other spell list the Necromancer has. That'll allow you to charm them or to make them forget that you were really mean to them. So there's different ways to treat those cities, but they are quite sort of an important hub for the game. And yeah, they sort of bring the possibility to sort of buy stuff you can't produce yourself, or find extra stuff, extra units that you can't usually get to.
Awesome. And so we're going to go ahead and pick up our mage. Oh, it didn't work. Oh man. All right. Well,
that's the first one.
Yeah. So it turns out that maybe you aren't so good at this thing yet. So we're going to have to prepare for this and study it a little bit more deeply. And as a result, we'll go ahead and, maybe in 9 turns. I don't think we're going to make it 9 turns. So I think we're going to have to wait till you guys get your hands on this to figure out, the gameplay mechanics revolving around moving your mage's tower. But I mean, it's so, Jan, as we're kind of wrapping things up, is there anything else you wanted to mention or anything else you wanted to bring up that you thought would be important?
We haven't talked about yet, maybe because this is currently the sort of exploration part. What we haven't talked about yet is the antagonists, and I don't want to give much too away, but we've already seen the circle. And in each game, there's going to be 4 mages from the circle, and that's going to be different every time you play. So it's not going to be the same mix of mages all the time. And these are kind of your major antagonists. So they're competing for resources. They're competing for mana. They have their own agendas. They have their own quest lines. So meeting them might result in you trying to befriend them, trying to do stuff. Maybe they're going to pressure you. Maybe they're going to help you. And this is kind of the competition you have. But again, because we're not building an army, this is not necessarily, you might get into conflict with them, but you don't have to, destroy them necessarily. You can if you want to. And you also can actually kind of coexist or race for certain things with them. So after a while, if you look at our map in kind of mid game, it looks very different from the usual 4X map where we have these like huge bulks. Instead, you'll have you've got a peasant vermin, so you can actually do the quest for them. That's specific to the topic here, because Golden Fields has a bug problem, and as did our game initially, but now it's much better. So that kind of leads you more into the story, and it opens up opportunities around you. So you can see that kind of the adventures drive you forward into the world a little. So we help you, give you motivation to explore. But yeah, as I was mentioning, the map looks more like several spots around, and it's a very different way of thinking about your troops. It's a very different way of working your territory and dealing with it. So it's much more like it's more RPG aspects and stuff like that than it's sort of empire building, and yet you still have to build up your domain over time. But it's definitely something where we try to take the system again, as we did before, take the system or the principles of 4X and then do something new with it, or at least a little new with it. So it gives you different challenges and kind of has a different flavor. And you've managed to build up a very nice domain.
Yeah, right. I mean, as you're talking, I've started to expand here quite a bit. And as you mentioned too, so I'm losing favor with these factions that I haven't yet discovered yet. So I imagine those are probably the 4 mages that I haven't met.
Mages. So essentially, they don't like you becoming bigger, and unless you do something for them, over time you're gonna annoy them by just being there. So it's really hard to prevent getting in trouble, but it's possible. We don't want to force you a certain way, and they can be scary to deal with, because their troops also evolve, and their abilities also evolve over the game. So after a while, they'll get new enchantments, new things they can do in combat. So they're formidable enemies.
All right, Jan. So far, I know that the audience is probably seeing the specialness that I'm seeing here too. The uniqueness, basically just how well these gameplay mechanics seem to be working together and driving you forward, like you said, to want to play more. Not only because the combat's fun and the crafting is fun, but the story, these quests that pop up and the story itself is just another reason to push forward and really just be immersed in this game. And I want to just say as we're wrapping things up that I really think you have something special here. I don't say that often, and I'm excited to see just how well this for the community, really the strategy community, responds to it, because I think they're going to really appreciate the new things you've tried here and how well all these new systems work together. So anything else you want to say before? I know we mentioned about the 4 antagonists, but is there anything else you wanted to say or mention?
No, I think there's plenty more stuff to discover, but I think that's something that people can look for in the game.
Exactly. So this was about a little over an hour of gameplay, and there's plenty more hours there, I promise you. I've been enjoying quite a bit of it, and I feel like I'm only touching the surface of the game. So yeah, I really appreciate you being here and showing off the game and walking me through a lot of this and highlighting a lot of the design decisions and some of the stuff that you've done here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
And this was Rob and Jan for Explominates. Until next time, keep exploring.